And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
How important is the US's response to this strike? As I said, we still have not heard anything, but how important will the US response be?
So thank you very much for inviting me on your program. I think it's important that you did actually screen that clip that you just put up of President Biden from a few weeks ago, because that red line that he claimed to put in place was broken the day before he made it, the day he actually said it, and numerous times since then. So the response, unfortunately, of the United States over the past few weeks on this quote-unquote red line has been incredibly unsatisfactory. And the Israelis know it. The Israelis know that they weren't going to get an arms embargo or heavy political pressure at the United Nations because of the fact that the United States would not impose a price on Israel, quote unquote, breaking this red line. So the red line isn't really a line at all. It's become very squiggly. And unfortunately, I think the Israelis know that there won't be any consequences from the United States. And this is why they're acting with such impunity and having embarked on this really catastrophic attack last night. But indeed, many times over the past 7 months. We're talking about a situation where now tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians have been killed, where Israel is in the dock for genocide charges at the ICJ, and where the ICC is seeking the ICC prosecutor is seeking arrest warrants for senior Israeli officials, including Netanyahu and the defense minister. So that's where we're at. And unfortunately, without a real commitment from the United States, it's not going to change.
We've also just heard news that Egyptian military saying that one security personnel has been killed in a shooting incident on the border with Gaza. And you're talking about wider security issues. Egypt has been very important in terms of the negotiations and, of course, in making sure that there's some line of communication between all the parties. Does this incident worry you, where a military personnel was killed at the Rafah border?
So before I answer that question, you mentioned the IDF are investigating. Unfortunately, the track record of the IDF and Israel when it comes to these sorts of situations is rather bad. And one of your own colleagues, a journalist by the name of Shireen Akle, was killed by Israeli security forces. The Israeli security forces investigated themselves, and nobody was really given any punishment whatsoever, even though it was clear that they did it. When it comes to regionalization, yes, I think this is very serious. Israel has removed the Palestinians from the Rafah border crossing on the Palestinian side of the border. And this was something that the Egyptians made clear was a red line for them. They've also increased the type of artillery, the type of weaponry that is in the quote-unquote Philadelphia corridor, which is a small line of territory along the border between Gaza and Egypt, and all of this a massive provocation to the Egyptians, especially having an Israeli tank with a huge, massive Israeli flag flying around on what everybody recognizes as occupied territory. And now you've just reported over, I think, the last few hours this incident took place, but we're still waiting for the details, where there's been an exchange of fire. I do not know the circumstances in that regard because those details are still coming out. But this is part of the the law of unintended consequences that so many security analysts such as myself have been warning about for the past 7 months. There's no such thing as quote unquote controlled escalation. When you escalate, you set things into motion that can very easily and very quickly spill out of control. And then you have a situation where wars can begin just because somebody decided that, oh, well, I think I can turn up the dial just a little bit. It doesn't work like that. You can't throw a ball down the hill and figure that you can just about decide how fast it's going to go or indeed where it's going to hit. It doesn't work like that.